So just talk casually, guys.
Yeah.
I feel like such a creeper because I'm like, look at everyone's cool stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of background creeping on these Zoom calls.
Yeah.
What is that? I think Jim might win for stuff that I don't totally understand, but I want to know more about.
It's a Zoom background. I'm actually in the pool right now.
I saw where like, this is kind of probably a weird bit of overthinking Zoom backgrounds, but it was these academics talking about teaching classes from home and like the politics of whether or not you clean up before you get on Zoom. Like on the one hand, of course, wanting to have like a professional facade, and then on the other hand, wanting to be like, hey, like this is my workplace invading home, and so I'm going to make that a visible thing. I just think that's a really cool thing to think about.
Yeah, I kind of cleaned up, but not all the way.
Looks great.
Well,
I just backed to the cleanest corner.
I know that for teachers, they were saying that it was pretty helpful for students who like weren't super excited about where they lived. So it was like a good tool for kids to be like, well, this is still just my Zoom background. I'm still just a student, which is cool.
Makes sense.
I heard a whole thing that like middle school kids like refuse to turn their camera on for like Zoom classes. Just absolute like hating their vibe, you know, consistently, where it's like it'll be a whole classroom where you think kids are there. And it's just like a teacher talking to a void. Like trying to get kids to answer anything anyway is a nightmare, but it's like, turn your camera on. Look directly into this. And don't feel like you look weird when you're 11 or whatever. And kids are like, nope, not gonna do it.
Not gonna do it.
All right. So I just wanted to give people a chance to come over. Thank you to everybody who has supported this project. We started back in April, and now after a month of working on the film, and then a couple months of coordination with sponsors, and then a couple delays due to COVID and due to the uprisings, we were finally able to put it out, and very, very gratefully we're able to raise over $20,000 for the Central Texas Food Bank and for the Dawa Fund, which is a nonprofit that does direct relief for people of color who are in the service industry, who are medical workers, and who are artists. So your art, my fellow panelists, your art, and then to the audience, your support made a material, concrete difference in people's lives. So thank you very, very, very much for being with this. It feels like yesterday that this was like a dream I had in the shower, and now it's like a real thing in the world, and it's very cool, especially since it's kind of this mind meld with a bunch of people who, a lot of whom I've never even met in person. But first, just to start, can we go around and just have everybody introduce yourselves and let everybody know which piece you worked on? I guess we'll start with you, Jim.
Oh, hi, Jim Eno here. Let's see, I'm a producer, engineer here in Austin. I play drums in Spoon. And did my piece have a name, Mobley? I don't even know if it did. I think I was like halfway through. Instrumental, something like that, right?
They all had, the name I gave them all was date names, and I can explain that later why. But Jim's was the piece that had like the video over it was a cityscape and then ink blots and then lots of digital noise. But Jim's was the instrumental of that piece.
Yeah.
Emily?
I'm Emily Basma. I'm a filmmaker and a photographer here in Austin. And my piece was the first video piece with the couple who get into a squabble.
All right, Sarah?
I'm Sarah Jones. I'm a filmmaker here in Austin too. My piece was the collage, paper cut, stop motion animation piece. So, yeah.
Which was awesome.
Thank you.
AJ?
Hi, my name is AJ Haynes, and I'm the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Serotones. And my piece is the song that goes with Sharon Meyer's Woman in Red part. They don't really have titles, but you'll explain why. Yeah.
Yeah, she actually shot that on her. She didn't have access to her professional rig, so she shot that on her childhood like home movie camera.
Really?
That was really, yeah.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah. And Alejandro?
I'm Alejandro Rose Garcia. I'm a musician here in Austin, Texas. I play under the name Shakey Graves. And mine was it was like a nighttime bike riding, swimming pool projection, instrumental 105892.
Awesome. Well, if anybody in the audience has any questions, I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on the chat, and so just shoot your questions, and I'll try to work them in. I
have a question.
Okay.
How did you come up with this? Was it just in the shower? Was that the answer?
It was literally in the shower. So that's where I don't know about y'all, but my best ideas come either in the shower or just as I'm falling asleep.
Wow.
Yes.
Have you fallen asleep in the shower yet?
Yes.
Whoa.
I wrote a song half asleep in the shower. And,
oh wow.
And it's one of my favorite songs that I've ever written. Good question.
I would shower every like couple minutes or something. I would shower a lot more. Those kinds of ideas.
Well, the idea came from it's this part of the game called Exquisite Corpse, and it's usually done with either writing or with drawing. So like if you do it with drawing, let's say there are 6 of us, we'll fold a piece of paper into 6ths, and then I'll draw my part on my 6th of the paper, and then I'll fold all of it under except the edge, and I hand it off to Jem, and he can see the edges of my lines. So he kind of interprets what he thinks that is, and then he passes it off and so on. And then you unfold it and you have this like weird, surreal thing. And I'm a filmmaker and a musician as well. I just realized I didn't introduce myself. We're on my channel, so I'm assuming that people know who I am. But I had never heard the idea applied to music or film, and it seemed like there's no reason why it couldn't be, as long as you had sufficiently talented people. And I knew in Austin and Shreveport, we had sufficiently talented people to pull it off. And it was right at the beginning of the lockdowns. And I was feeling really listless. And I'm sure you guys can all identify with this, but like being creative, you really depend on deadlines and like somebody telling you, hey, we need this.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like time didn't matter at all. Nobody cared when I wrote anything or whether I put it out.
It's such a weird thing to realize. We were like, I need deadlines. I hate deadlines.
I love deadlines.
Who am I?
Exactly. So I thought the idea of like getting a bunch of us together, creating a mental but real deadline and time crunch, but then like removing all of the bullshit that we normally have to deal with, like, well, the people in my band like this, how do we play this live, like, can we get this played on the radio, can we get this synced, like, does this have any appeal, blah 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 blah, like all of that, going back to
is it 3 minutes and 30 seconds,
right?
Yeah.
Like, do you get to the verse in the first 13 seconds? Like, getting rid of all that and getting back to the stuff that made me excited about being an artist in the first place, which is just that pure feeling of this didn't exist until I did a thing and then it existed. And so then I reached out to all of you lovely people, and you all agreed to take part in the madness. And a month later, we had this amazingly beautiful thing, which I wasn't sure whether that would happen. I thought it could be like a train wreck, you know, like there weren't examples of this that I could look at, but everybody did such a freaking good job that it just it's really inspiring. I've talked to a lot of people who are really moved by the idea of artists coming together and collaborating, and then, you know, using that to raise money for people's real needs in the world. So thank you all again for that.
Well, thank you.
I guess
that's a great idea, and it was a blast. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. I guess to start with Jim, because Jim has kind of an interesting story around the creation of his piece. Jim has obviously been in the music industry for a long time and is kind of a legend around these parts, but his work on this project is his first published solo work. Yeah. So can you talk to us about like what that was like and, you know, why you decided to do it now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the only reason why I did it was because you convinced me that I could. You know, I mean, I was going to actually discuss our little text conversation, you know, and he's like, hey, I got this idea. Do you want to participate? And for me, I'm a drummer, but I've produced a lot of records, engineered a lot of records since about 2001 or so. So I know my way around sonics and songs and things like that, but I don't really know a lot of instruments. You know, there are certain people that play everything. They can generate riffs. They're great. I love working with people like that because it's like, use that idea, don't use this idea. You know, it's really nice to be able to do that, and I can have the vision. It was really overwhelming for me to actually come up with a piece of music where I actually had to come up with those ideas. So, you know, but I remember you saying, look, you're really good with sound, and, you know, I think you're going to have no problem with it. And again, I just really was craving doing something, and I was craving, like you said, a deadline. I'm like, okay, 2 days, man. You know, I think I'm going to try to do it. As you notice from my piece, everything was really distorted because I just felt like that's where my head was at. You know, I like took a 808 drum machine and just distorted the crap out of it. And that was where I started. And then I started putting things on top of it, played drums and everything. But I mean, it was a great experience for me. I still am a little bit like, you know, was it good? I don't know. It's the first thing I get out of that.
It was good.
You know, thank you guys.
Yeah, it was good.
But you know, it's just for me, you know, Alejandro, how many, I mean, songs have you written? You know, I mean, it's like.
No, I've written a lot more, like a minute of a song. Okay. Like what this was I was like, I can accomplish this finishing a song.
You have a harder time with that?
It's a whole thing, you know. I think this sort of having limitations or a deadline was really nice, to where I feel like no matter what you do, you'll usually end up maybe doing too many swipes at something, where you'll start, and even if you like something to start with, you're like, well, I couldn't be done, you know, because I just started on this. And I think it's always an impulse to keep sort of scraping at stuff. Yeah. And it's important to sometimes just be like, yeah, it's done. This is great.
Yeah, I was really glad it was limited at 2 minutes, so I didn't have to add another chord or anything, you know, to freak me out.
I like that you said generating riffs. It was like a robot. Like, I must generate riffs.
Exactly. I need a new riff.
Generate riffs.
Like, where's that riff generator in the studio here? Where is he?
It's one of the buttons behind you.
I know. Yeah.
Emily, can you talk about the inspiration behind your piece? So Emily did the visual that was based off the instrumental that I wrote, the first piece. And I was both impressed and intimidated by it when it came in, because it was like, this is such a strong statement. I hope that the rest of the project can keep up with this. But talk about like what inspired the piece.
So I think I was thinking about how my grandma had a formal living room growing up that we weren't allowed to go in. And so I was like, what are the kids with the formal living rooms doing in their houses right now? Like, are they allowed to, are their parents like, fine, you can go sit in there? Or are they just like sneaking in at night? And so I was thinking about kind of what it would be like if we had that in our house. And also this like front of me telling everyone that I was doing totally fine with the quarantine. I was like, yeah, no guys, I'm enjoying it. It's great. But really I was just like, this is not cool. And so I think that's really what I was channeling with the piece.
That totally came through. Now that you say that, my grandmother also has a formal living room that I haven't thought about in years. That's so cool. How did you? So for just to refresh everybody's memory, it's a couple in a room talking to each other, very dramatic lighting, and then there's these like surreal subtitles that are the dialogue. Did you kind of plan out, or how, or was it improvised as you went?
It was kind of, we had the whole dialogue planned out. It was my partner and I that made it. And we were like, I was like, you're just going to not care what I'm talking about until you realize that I'm trying to go up into that room, and I'm just going to try to be really coy about it. But then we're going to just snap. And so I think the first section was pretty planned out. And then we were like, all right, let's just go. Also, it was getting really late because we had to wait for it to be nighttime. And my camera was not cooperating at all with me. So by the end of it, I do think that we were like unhinged.
Well, it worked. Whatever the alchemy was.
I have a question for you, Emily. So I'm obsessed with Maya Deren.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The meshes
Accurate.
of the afternoon.
I'm sorry.
It's meshes of the afternoon, like with a mirror, and then they like there's certain like shots where I was like, oh my god, it's like Maya Deren, speak to my heart.
Right. Yeah. No. It's. I feel like she's very. She lives in my brain at this point. I've connected and researched her work so much. So yeah. So I'm glad you caught that.
I love like Maya Deren, because like even the word Maya comes from like Hindu, like what's real or what's not real, or what is, like the illusion of the soul or something like that. And I love that part of what I love and hate about this time is we're kind of reduced to our intimate spaces. And if you're in your intimate space with your partner, it's like, I still like you, I think. I haven't killed you yet. Cool.
A lot of that. Yeah. A lot of that.
AJ, can you talk to us about like what went into your piece?
Yeah, so it actually, I feel like I cheated a little bit because I had what I ended up coming up with was something that was ringing around in my head for years that didn't, like we're good at writing like I'm pretty good at writing little snippets here and there. And for me, sometimes that's enough, like, whatever, like this, I made a thing, it exists in my brain, it makes me feel good, cool. And I've started writing this is my first time like actually tracking out something completely by myself, which was really intimidating. I usually rely on my band, and I definitely have the worst imposter syndrome, and they're definitely better bassists and keyboard players and everything else than I am. But the song itself is inspired by one of my best friends growing up. She's like, her home space wasn't safe, whenever you're dealing with trauma and abuse, home is not really where you want to go. And during this time, we oftentimes don't have an option, right? And also with my work, whenever I'm in Shreveport, I work as a patient advocate at one of 3 abortion clinics in this whole state of Louisiana. And so a lot of those narratives, right, are of moving forward and of survival, right? And some of those narratives are terrifying what people can endure. And this was kind of like my way of saying, like, whatever happens, I'm steady, I'll be here for you. And I think that's what everyone needs, right? Everyone needs to feel love in whatever spaces they can. And yeah, that's what my piece is about.
I didn't realize that there's a personal level to it, because it works so well on the kind of like macrocosm level, like talking about home as being a hostile place as we're in the midst of this pandemic, where like the people who are entrusted with governing us and supposedly protecting our health and lives are just showing so much antipathy towards our health and safety and are like endangering us. It felt like that's what you were talking about, but it works. I think it works really well on both levels.
But I think that's what's interesting about this entire piece, right? Is that like the interior is like, that's where the real stuff is. And it's fucking scary. Like, I don't want to talk about my feelings. Like, feelings are the worst, but it's so, what I love about every single one of these pieces is that it's necessary. You know, like every bit is necessary, whether, like what Jim, you were saying, is this good or not? It doesn't fucking matter if it's good or not. It's necessary and you had to do it, you know?
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love it personally. But yeah, it's necessity, and it's making art out of necessity that I think is really, really cool about everybody's good things.
Yeah.
Sarah, can you talk about your piece? Yours was there were a few, I think there were probably 3 or 4 animated pieces, but yours was the only like conventional, like replacement handmade animation piece. Can you talk about like what the inspiration was, what you were trying to say with it, but also like what gave you the courage to attempt that in 48 hours?
So I guess for me, I make collages like that, not animated, but just like, glued collages like that on my own time. It's almost kind of like a journal piece, stream of consciousness type of thing. And so when I got my music, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to make. And I was riffing off with my boyfriend, and he's like, well, what if you did one of your collages, but you animated it? And I was like, that sounds great. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into, because when I do my collages, I cut everything out with an X-Acto blade, and the pieces of paper are like this big. And so the first day was just finding all of my images, because I have stacks and stacks of coffee table books and old magazines and stuff like that I pull all my images from. And so it was a lot of just like, okay, this picture is speaking to me at this time. I lived in West Yellowstone for 5 months. And so that background picture for the first portion of it is the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. And so that piece like really stuck to me, because to me, Yellowstone's like this spiritual connection place that I have. And so I kind of pictured myself, I guess, as that girl falling into the canyon at the beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, we are literally taking a leap into the unknown. And then a lot of it is just like, like a stream of conscious, like, okay, this piece is working with me. And yeah, it was crazy. Like I said, the first day was cutting everything out. And then the second day was on my floor here in this room, like with my camera above me, moving things like tiny, tiny little fractions of inches and taking a picture, and then moving it again and then taking a picture. And I had to turn the AC off in my house because it was blowing the paper.
Oh.
You're like sticky
so
and sweaty.
So I'm like crouched under the tripod, like moving this paper, and they're all like this big, and it was crazy. But super rewarding, because I had it was, I don't know, it was just really, really good. I don't know if anyone has any like questions.
So I couldn't tell from your story, is it your first animated piece?
Yes.
This is your very first one? That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. So give people a little background. I studied film and I specialized in animation, and particularly like replacement animation, which is what Sarah's piece was. And I spent just months of life in a basement on campus making animation, and it's mind blowing that that was your first try and that you pulled it off in 48 hours. So even more respect than I already had for you for that piece.
I think the hardest bit for me was editing it together. Just, yeah, because you finish the physical piece and then you have to take it to a computer and actually cut it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Jim asked a question before we all came on about how I paired everybody up, and it opens an interesting like philosophical window into the project. I was really committed at the beginning to have it be really egalitarian, like anarchistic, like nobody's on top of anybody. I was just kind of the hub of the wheel that was connecting everybody, but not really the leader per se. And so I also tried to anonymize everybody so that you wouldn't be influenced by any previous impressions you had of people or their work or, you know, their reputation or anything like that. And so most of the decision making was random. If there was ever a decision that I could randomize, I would literally just assign the choices numbers and use a random number generator to pick them. There were some cases, like I think Alano had a specific date he needed to work on where I would pin someone to a certain place based on a need they had. But other than that, it was all random. And I think that makes the kind of incredible level of quality and production value that came out of it even more impressive, because I think I'm a solo artist. I make my records almost entirely by myself. And so I have a high level of control on the things I work on. And so I have kind of an impulse to like meddle at every level of everything. And this was really an education in kind of letting things just be what they want to be. And I'm really pleased with how it came out. I guess a question for the musicians: what was it like? Because I know we've all had visuals made for our music in the past, but this is kind of a different circumstance. What was it like seeing the piece that was created for your music?
I loved it. I wish I could have done it over and over again somehow. You know what I mean? Like I think you left a lot of room for the kind of inherent magic to get in, you know, by randomizing things and like for me, because we got to hear what 10 seconds, right, of whoever was before us or something like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And like mine was just I think it was Graham's, and it was just like it didn't even reflect the track. When I heard the whole thing, I was like, what? But it was like a reverb ghost, you know? It was just like, whoa. Like that's all I got was just like spooky noise, you know? And I was like, okay. But I had talked to like my friend Kelsey who did one, and she got, I think Kalu was before her. And so he was singing. So she wrote lyrics, but I just heard ghost noise. So I was like, instrumental time for me, you know? And then later I was like, people wrote lyric, you know, like, but I thought that was all sort of the best part of all of it, is like this kind of, it wouldn't have been as fun if everybody was trying to write a narrative piece or felt, you know, so like seeing the video, I can't stress enough. I just wish that I could get that experience over and over again. Like, what did you make? What did your mind consider? You know, because it's like that holy trinity of the audience, you know, the audio and the visual all being sort of mysterious to each other. Like what you hear from a song being able to create, and then the people watching both sometimes take something different away from what you intended musically and probably from what the person intended visually. So it's a mystery on all sides. Like, what am I looking at? You know, it's great.
For me, when I first saw the visuals, I was like, man, Mobley is a genius for pairing it up with this guy. And now I just know it's a random number generator.
All right. All right.
No, but seriously though, I was really like, I was blown away. I was blown away by the video. I was like, this is amazing. I thought he did a great job. Jonathan Hortzman, he like killed it.
What about you, AJ?
I'm sorry, I heard Holy Trinity, and all my country ass thought was like, when you make food, you know what I mean?
Like onions, bell peppers,
yeah.
And Brad, I was like, got a Holy
Carrot.
Trinity that's beautiful. But I mean, that is part of like, you know, that's just my Louisiana coming out. Like, what I love about the randomness of it, and what I love also about cooking is you just take, this is here and this is here, and you throw it together. And it's like, it's really committing to a moment that makes everything, right? But I think for me, I love deadlines because they're like, you have to get this done. And it doesn't matter if you procrastinate. Procrastinate all you want to, you still have to get it done. And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely got my shit finished. Like, I was pushing it. I was having like a whole breakdown because I was like, I'm a terrible musician. Like, I just got this like drum machine and I was like, I don't know how to fucking work this. And like, I don't know how to play bass. I know how to sing. And I had like a whole like 3 o'clock in the morning full fucking meltdown.
Oh man.
I was like, why do I even music? Why do I even music? And then I finished and I was like, oh, this is okay. This is good. Cool.
Yeah. What has everybody's and we can start with the filmmakers on this one. For me, and I think based on my discussions with a lot of the people in the project, this was the first thing I really worked on, the first creative project that I really worked on after the lockdown started. What has the kind of trajectory of everybody's creative lives looked like? Because I know for me personally, I was basically at a standstill, and then this was kind of a catalyst that got the gears turning again, and I basically haven't stopped since then. But what about everybody else? Emily?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped remind me that I love this, which was good because I had so many like South by jobs just disappear. And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. And so then I just like sat on my couch and was sad for a long time. And then I got your email and I was like, oh, sick. And it's kind of the same story though, is I'm writing a lot more, which is fun because I don't write much. And I've just, once I finished and I edited that piece and I sent it to you, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is easy. Like, this is literally what I'm good at. So I'm just going to keep shooting and I'm going to keep pushing it. So thank you for reinvigorating that in me.
Thank you. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, this really kickstarted like being creative again for me too, because it was definitely like a minute of having to cope with the new reality of the state of everything. And so yeah, having, like AJ said, like deadlines to hold yourself to, you know, I think that, to me, like that's really what's missing, at least in my life, is to have like these things with a date and a time that things need to be turned in or the work needs to be made. And so yeah, having this project kind of really made me realize that I need to keep deadlines for myself, you know, that I don't need to have another person dictate that. So yeah, it's just been something to help, I guess, keep me on track.
Yeah. What about you, AJ?
I gotta make a damn record. So it's been an interesting time because I find myself like I'm in Shreveport, which is a pretty isolating place in some really good ways, right? So I find myself entrenched in organizing and advocating leading up to November because we have some really treacherous things on the ballot come November 3rd. So I find myself kind of in that state, but then also, you know, my band's in the middle of some new things. right when the pandemic hit, my keyboard player and my bassist left the band. And so I have a new keyboard player, a new bassist, and just trying to relearn myself, like a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of breakdowns. So this was really great because, you know, what I appreciate about everyone's honesty during this time is that everyone's been honest about their grieving. You know, I think we're all collectively going through the process of grief, and I think it's important to sit with that. And for me, this reminded me of how necessary surrealism is, I think, during this time. Like, there's something about, and especially like Afro-surrealism, especially thinking about, like, I love like the Latin American surrealist creators, because when you come from a surrealist perspective, from a typically marginalized lens, right, all you're doing is amplifying one facet of your reality. It's not, and what I love about this project too is that it's like, what frustrated me about the surrealists is it's like, oh, fuck all, like everyone's got their bills paid, everyone's got patrons, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the surrealists were mostly like, they were fine. And what I love about this is it speaks to how I think in a really pragmatic way that like art is supposed to function. Art is supposed to have a purpose. And what I love about this is it taps into my love of art for art's sake and like, we'll see. And know there's a real immediate community need that's being met, and we did it. And so I'm trying to integrate more of that into like my creative space and being more real about what my needs are as an artist. Like I'm not a solo artist, and so there's a lot of like negotiating that has happened, and in some ways to my detriment. So I'm excited to like be more vocal about what my needs are, and I think this project like really pushed that forward. Yay, thank you.
Awesome. What about you, Alejandro?
Yeah, I mean, this, especially kind of when you hit me up, it's like just doing things for the concept of like self-promotion or trying to further some sort of career or independent path just instantly felt sort of moot. You know, it was like, it's enough literally just trying to wrap my mind around the world right now. And, you know, your family and your house and your health, and, you know, it's like, and the microcosm, macrocosm thing. And to me, my art or music or whatever has always just been an extension of my psyche, you know, just my trying to grapple with the world, you know, and I do it sort of as a personal thing. And then anything else, you know, people enjoying it is really like the sprinkles on top. But I feel like in the process, it's really easy to lose sight of that and feel like production is key, or you're making something for someone. Like I watched the Rick Rubin documentary a couple weeks ago, and it's super great. It's called Shangri-La. And he was talking about how, you know, like it's ideal to make music that maybe people didn't even know they want to hear, as opposed to trying to make something that you think someone's gonna want. And I guess in general, like the thing I enjoyed so much about this is that I didn't feel, I always have like genre identity. I think everyone's like, what do I do? Do I play rock music? Am I, you know, like, are you gonna like this? Am I crossing too many streams? You know, like, am I rapping? Who am I? You know, or whatever. And for this, it didn't even cross my mind. I just started. This is probably the only thing I've ever turned in ahead of time. Like I sat down and started making something and was like, instead of like, oh, I'm not sure if that fits into this concept you've been thinking of for the last 8 months, well, instead of sleeping or whatever, you know, I was like, dope. And then the next thing I was like, oh, cool. And then it was like a couple more things. And I was like, that's 2 minutes, I guess. And then it was like, and then I was like, I was like, I like that. You know, like, does this, anyway, it just sort of went in one door and out the other. And, you know, the cool thing about this is that it's like, it literally turned into food for people more directly than going through the other process of alchemy of like, come to my show and we'll exchange money and you go do this and maybe you'll use it for food or not, or, you know, whatever. So, you know, on all those sides, it's like it brought in community because I got to put my trust in other people to finish it. It wasn't entirely something that I beat myself up or stressed about. That was your job. But yeah, it just reminded me that like, I feel like I'm the only one that puts a leash on me all the time, you know, that like, instead of just making things like I used to when no one was listening, I more than I think maybe make things, I typecast myself a little bit in my own life. So this kind of helped me be like, do whatever, you know, like Sarah did, like make an animation, like what, you know, do whatever. Don't beat yourself up if you're just like not doing what you did a few months back, because no one is. So like,
yeah,
go on.
That's awesome. What about you, Jim?
Well, this was easily the 2 most productive days that I've had the entire time since the pandemic. So, I mean, I was hoping this would be like a creative jumping off point, and I think there are little seeds of it here and there, but I mean, man, it's like a pretty heavy time right now, and it's hard for me to be focused and do music and be confident and stuff like that, you know. So I'm digging myself out, you know, and trying to like, you know, look at other things and you know, just trying to be you know, participate in a lot of different things, I guess, you know. So, and creativity is flowing back, I guess. So
Well, we went a little bit over what I expected the time to be, but it was a good conversation. So people will forgive us. Thank you for your work on projects. I can't overstate how humbling it was to be allowed to kind of be the steward of all of your work and to help turn it into what we were able to turn it into. For everybody who's watching, and all of this is directed toward raising money for the Central Texas Food Bank and for the Dawa Fund. So down in the description, there's a link to a PayPal, and you can send however much money you want to send there, all of your money if you want to send it there, and we will we'll pass it along to people who need it, and hopefully continue to make something good of this. I said at the outset that I wanted this to be really ephemeral, so it will not be online forever. So if you enjoyed it, please share it with other people, because eventually I'm going to take it down and it's just going to be gone, because this was just a moment in time that happened. But thank you all again, and hopefully we can do something like this again in the future, and then once we're able to see each other without risking a breakout of virus, we can commute together in person. But thank you all very much again.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thank you for putting this all together. Incredible work.
Thanks, Mobley. Awesome job, man.
Absolutely.
Right.
Everybody on stream, hang for a second. I'm gonna just end the YouTube, and then we can say a proper goodbye.
Okay.
Yay!